talking today about managing behaviors targeted for reduction at home and what to expect from your BCBA if you receive ABA services. BCBA might be something you hear a lot tonight. It stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst. If you're not sure what that is just a clinician who has a credential through the ABA services, through the BACBA, but they are the people who will assess your child when they start services and every 6 months following to pick out goals that you think are important and that will change your kids' lives, making them more independent or able to access situations that they would not have prior. Um, so I hope that made sense. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a couple slides, though. If it didn't, don't worry. I have been a BCBA for over 3 years. I was a behavior technician prior to becoming a BCBA for about 2 years. Those are the staff who work with kiddos every day, um, running the programs that the BCBA writes. But just a couple more housekeeping things. Everyone is on mute. To ask a question, please unmute yourself or type it in the chat. I'm not sure if you guys can unmute yourselves. It might be easier for the chat, but if you're able to, go for it.
Yeah,
We
chat's
also,
perfect.
oh, perfect. All right. Amazing. And then we want this presentation to be as interactive as possible, so please ask questions throughout. All right. About Bierman. So Bierman Autism Centers is a place where young kids engage in play to learn foundational skills they can build on, such as self-advocacy and communication. We recognize that every kid's success is unique, and our one-on-one approach allows us to drive progress using measurable outcomes while each child advances on their own terms. Our team is dedicated to making learning welcoming and fun by erasing the line between learning and play. Kids at our centers enjoy taking on new challenges and become motivated as they learn new skills. Our approach ensures that kids become confident and empowered lifelong learners. The Bierman Circle of Care and Support includes the whole family, not just the child. We empower parents through training and collaboration. We do have some pillars. Our pillars for Bierman are we let kids be kids. We accept every child for who they are, which is a unique person. We learn through play. We erase that line between learning and play to keep children engaged and motivated. Empowerment is key. We always use everyday activities to teach children foundational skills such as self-advocacy and communication. With families is something we definitely believe in. We believe in the importance of building connections and working towards shared goals. And we have a commitment to progress, and we are dedicated to each child's everyday and long-term progress. The agenda for tonight is that we are going to define what behavior is, discuss what replacement behaviors are. We're going to review the 4 functions of behavior, and then we're going to look through some examples of proactive and reactive strategies to reduce challenging behavior and practice them. If you don't recognize any of these words, that is completely fine. We are going to talk about what all of this means as we go. Please do not stress out. But the first topic is, what is behavior? Behavior is any interaction a person has with their environment. It includes behaviors that we want to see more, but also those that we would like to see less. Some examples of behavior are painting, playing, typing, crying, hitting, and thinking. So both positive behaviors that we want to see more often and behaviors we're looking to reduce and we don't want to see as often. So playing for kids is a great behavior we could increase, but maybe hitting is a behavior we want to reduce so that they can access more social situations. A lot of what we do is behavior. If you want to throw a couple ideas of what behavior might be in the chat, we can review with you. It could be something you want to see your kiddo do more or something you're looking to see less. I'll give it about 20 seconds and then we will move on to the next slide. All right. All right, we will keep going, but we'll talk about a lot of different behaviors that you can see, both from adults and children, because we all engage in behaviors. But one important thing to know about with behavior is that behavior is communication. Children engage in both desired behaviors and behaviors targeted for reduction in order to communicate a want or a need. And it is possible to replace a behavior targeted for reduction with a desired behavior if they serve the same function. So there are a couple functions of behavior we're going to talk about very shortly. When you are considering a behavior that you would like to reduce, however, there are a couple things to consider. You want to think about if it's happening more often than it should at your child's age, if it's limiting the child's learning or functioning or independence, if it's a safety risk, or would it positively affect the child and others if this behavior was replaced or reduced. If it's just a typical child behavior that's happening at a normal rate, it might not be worth intervening, and you might want to um, let them engage in that communication while you teach other ways of communication. But if it's doing something like limiting their learning or functioning, or if it's a safety risk, then you might change your mind and want to intervene and try to reduce it. So just some things to think about. When you're considering what replacement behavior to replace it with, you also want to think about a couple things, and you want to choose a behavior that is age appropriate and choose a behavior that gets the same needs met as the behavior that they're engaging in. Choose a safe alternative to the behavior that you're looking to reduce, and choose a behavior that is easier than the behavior targeted for reduction. We'll talk a lot more about what a behavior targeted for reduction is, but when we're thinking about teaching kids, we always want to make sure we're teaching them age appropriate skills, making sure that they get their wants and their needs met. One way a replacement behavior is one way to get them met with a more positive behavior occurring, but we want to make sure the same needs get met as the behavior we're looking to reduce. We always obviously want our children to be safe and never want to put them in harm's way. But the choose a behavior that is easier than the behavior targeted for reduction is a really, really interesting one, because if you if kids think that the replacement behavior is harder than the one that they were already engaging in order to get the same need or want met, they're not going to want to replace that behavior. They're going to default to the behavior we're looking to reduce, and that's going to make it a lot harder to reduce that behavior and increase the replacement behavior. This is still a lot of information, so we're going to talk about what this all means now, while we review some proactive and reactive strategies that you can use across all functions of behavior and for certain functions of behavior. This is where it all starts to tie together, I promise. Um, but keep in mind that proactive strategies are just strategies we use before the behavior targeted for reduction, and it works best if you use it across all people in their lives, all environments, and throughout their whole day. And reactive strategies are just used after the behavior targeted for reduction and works best if it's used all day across all environments as well. So consistency is really important for kiddos, and making sure that everyone is approaching things in a similar manner will help reduce the behaviors you don't want to see as often and increase behaviors you would like to see more often. This ties to functions of behavior, which is what's really interesting about today's presentation. We are going to talk about 4 different functions of behavior. They're not all of the functions of behavior, but they're the 4 most common. And this is what your child might be trying to communicate with behaviors that you want to see less often. So, the 4 common functions of behavior are automatically maintained behavior, escape maintained behavior, attention maintained behavior, and tangible maintained behavior. And we're going to talk about all 4 of these with examples and strategies that you can use to reduce them. The first one is automatic. Automatic maintained behaviors are sometimes referred to as sensory maintained behaviors, and that is because an automatic behavior is when a behavior occurs because engaging in that behavior feels good. So there's no external reinforcement. There's nobody else providing reinforcement. That child is engaging in the behavior because it feels good to them. This could be something like scratching an itch, pulling up the blankets if you're cold. Whatever they're doing feels good, and so they're going to continue doing it. We all have automatic maintained behaviors. I know pulling up the blankets, especially in the winter, can be a big one for me because my house is always way too cold. Another fun part about functions of behavior is that the individual may not be aware of this happening. So the kiddo doesn't need to know that this is an automatic maintained behavior that makes them feel good in order for the behavior to increase or decrease. So there's an example at the bottom where Rachel's mom tells her to go play while she makes dinner, and Rachel begins jumping off the couches and the coffee tables, and Rachel's mom tells her to stop jumping off of things. It could be a behavior you want to increase or decrease in your home. Jumping off of the couch could be something that you allow or you don't allow. But in this scenario, it is something that Rachel enjoys doing, and she enjoys that feeling of jumping, and so she's going to continue jumping. And that's an automatic maintained behavior. Some strategies you can use for those behaviors that kids continue to engage in because they like the feeling are teaching some alternative ways to get similar sensory input. So, if jumping off of couches was your kid's behavior that you want to reduce in your home, maybe buying a trampoline and teaching an alternate way to get that jumping sensation out. Teaching that jumping on a trampoline is safer than jumping off of the tables, and then it's contained to where they should be jumping. Some other things that people sometimes like to do is running. They like to feel the wind in their face or the burn on their thighs or, their feet hitting the floor. And if they're running in an unsafe place, you might want to reduce that. You could replace it with an appropriate running situation, like running on a treadmill. And spinning is another one that our kiddos tend to love. So you could always teach an appropriate place to spin. There are reactive strategies as well. So the reactive strategies are what you're doing after the behavior targeted for reduction. And you can reduce sensory input from that behavior, causing the person to feel less of those impacts. So maybe that is, if your couch is really tall, maybe having a shorter couch available during the time they're playing and have them play in a different room so they're not getting as much of the fun jump feeling from that. And this isn't always possible, so you can try different things, you can combine things different ways, and you can adapt this for yourselves in your home. You can also redirect to the alternative behaviors you're teaching. So if it was that girl who was jumping off of couches and you're trying to teach her to jump on the trampoline, maybe you stop her from jumping on the couch the next night and redirect her to that trampoline so she uses those. I do want to go over ones that all strategies included in this presentation are general best practice strategies based on ABA principles and do not override individual plans created following an evaluation of anyone or by any professional. That is on every slide because that is so true. We individualize our treatment for all of our kiddos. I won't say it every slide, but I did want to put it out there once. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I'm going to keep going to escape maintain behavior, and we will go over questions either at the end or whenever there's a good time. Escape maintained behavior is when a behavior occurs because someone wants to avoid, escape, or delay an activity or task or event. So, like if a kiddo doesn't like bath time, they might engage in some behaviors you want to reduce because they're trying to avoid bath time or get out of bath time. Or it could be in the morning when they're really tired and they don't want to get ready for school and they're trying to stay home or they're trying to engage in these behaviors that make getting ready harder. Doing homework's another big one that I never really wanted to do when I got home from school. So I probably had some behaviors that my mother wanted to reduce. And again, the individual may not be aware that it's happening. So our example for an escape maintain behavior is mom tells Lily that it is time for a bath, and Lily says, I don't want to take a bath right now. So mom says, okay, we can take one later. This is a behavior I would want to increase in my home and see more often because it's functional communication, and them talking and saying that they don't want to take a bath right now can be a replacement behavior for some of those disruptive behaviors that you're looking to reduce in home. So I like to put examples that have both the behaviors that we want to increase and the behaviors we want to decrease because all of it is behavior. And there are strategies to decrease behaviors that are escape maintained. Those proactive strategies that we are using all day, every day, we're going to teach functional ways to request escape. So we're going to teach someone to say, I don't want to do that. Can we do it later? Not tonight. Sometimes with things like bath, that is not always possible to honor. You're gonna have to tell your kiddo that they have to take a bath, but there are other strategies you can use if that is not for you. Pick and choose what works for you in your home. Some other of the proactive strategies that we use is we often use first then language, using something that is really motivating to the kiddo as a reward for after the task. So we could say first bath and then you get to watch your favorite movie, or first bath and then you get your favorite snack. And it makes our kiddos a lot more motivated to do the things that aren't super exciting for them. Or we can alter the task by making it more easier, making it more fun or less stimulating. I often like to make things a game. So if it was bathing that your kiddo didn't want to engage in and they were trying to avoid or delay, you might say, like, how quickly can we wash our body, or how much soap can we use today? And make it kind of a timed game. You might want to put their favorite music or their favorite toys with the bath so that they're kind of a lot more motivated to start the activity. Reactively, if you do see those behaviors you want to reduce, you can always remind the person what they will get to do after the task. You can use that first then language again. You can say, hey, remember, after this, we're going to have our favorite snack ever. We just have to do this really quickly. They might want that snack and they might hop in that bath for you. You can also provide choices, maybe bathrooms or soaps that they use or toys that they get to play with. You can always modify the situation or request it. I said always. You can't always, but if it works for your situation, you can modify the request or the situation. So in schools, often this will look like if I ask a kid to, or in centers, if I ask a kid to write the alphabet, maybe I'll say write A through F and make that a little bit shorter for them. You can also prompt one or two desired behaviors before allowing access to escape. And an example of that I love is that communication that we were talking about on the last slide. If your kiddo is engaging in a behavior that you want to reduce in the home, like running away when you say it's bath time, or closing the door to their room, you can always just tell them you can say all done or you can say right now and prompt that behavior that you want to see more often. And then if you're able to, you can maybe give them a little bit longer before doing it. Or you can say, we don't have to shower tonight, we can shower tomorrow. Um, I don't want to make it sound so easy. I don't want to make it sound like every single one of these will work every single time. But there are a couple choices that you can pick from based on your situation. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can talk about them a little bit. All right. Then I will move on to attention. Feel free to keep writing your questions if you're writing any in there and we will go over them. But attention maintained behavior is the third function we're reviewing today. And these are the behaviors that we see happen more often when the behavior occurs because an individual wants someone to engage with them. So they're getting reinforcement from someone else in their environment. And this could be getting a hug afterwards or being told good job or eye contact. When your kid comes home with an A+ on their paper, they might get a hug and they might be more motivated to get an A+ next time to get that hug from you. It can be both good and positive attention like that, or it could be something that we perceive as bad or negative attention. Something like that could be a reprimand. No, don't do that. Get down, please. It could even be like a raised tone of voice that they don't hear very often. Some of our kiddos are not able to differentiate those different types of attention, and so both of those can sometimes be reinforcing because they're getting some sort of attention. So I really like when we talk about eye contact being attention because it really sometimes is that small, if it's an attention-maintained behavior. And again, the individual may not be aware this is happening. They might not realize why they're engaging in this behavior. And it's because you give them a hug every time or you tell them it's good job every time. But they really like that feeling. And so they do that more often. Our example for attention maintained behavior is that Kevin sees his mom sitting on the couch and he climbs into his mom's lap and he gives his mom a hug. He might not know it, but if he likes that hug, which most kiddos love, um, that he might climb up into his mom's lap the next day, and he might climb up into it a couple times because he wants more of those hugs. We have proactive and reactive strategies if you're looking to reduce an attention maintain behavior as well. So if they're maybe jumping off the couch because they like for you to tell them not to do that, or they like it when you come over and tell them that they have to sit on the floor. Proactively, you might want to increase attention when your kiddo is engaging in a desired behavior. Every time they're doing something that they should, we can tell them that they're doing a great job because they're doing what's expected, whether they're sitting safely, whether they're watching TV, whether they're playing with a toy. I always like to tell them exactly when they're doing a wonderful job so that they're getting that attention in a more positive way with behaviors that we want to see more often. We also want to teach alternative ways to get attention, like excuse me or a tap on a shoulder, some sort of request where you'll know that your kiddo is looking for attention without them engaging in that behavior. And we want to reinforce that by giving their attention when they engage in saying excuse me or tapping you on the shoulder or any appropriate request for attention. And often it's you can set reminders to provide attention every so often, and it doesn't have to be like a reminder on your phone. Obviously, you're giving your kiddo attention, but you might want maybe it's one-to-one attention. Maybe they're trying to get attention when their brothers are getting attention or their sisters are getting attention, and it's not possible to split your attention like that. You might be able to set just a little 5 minutes aside every day or every week for your kiddo to just have one-on-one attention from you, and you guys can do something small together. Again, that's proactively, that's all what we're doing before we even see the behavior we're looking to reduce. But if we do see the behavior we're looking to reduce, we're gonna use our reactive strategies, which can be reducing attention following a challenging behavior when it's safe to do so, or waiting for a calm body, even if it's only for a few seconds before providing attention. This is not always possible. If it's an unsafe behavior, sometimes you have to provide attention. But if it's a behavior where your kiddo isn't going to get hurt if you give it a couple seconds, if you don't look at them for a few seconds or tell them to get down, it might be worth trying to see if they don't find that as reinforcing anymore and they don't engage in that behavior as often. Again, if you have any concerns, you should consult with the BCBA because these are just general best practice strategies, that you guys can use for whatever works for you in your home. And then the fourth function of behavior, or the fourth common function of behavior, because there are a couple more, but these are the big ones that we see all the time, is a tangible maintained behavior. And this is when a behavior occurs because the individual wants to gain access to something like a toy or an activity or food or even a location. They like a different spot. They want to go see something in a different area of the house or the store. And again, the individual may not be aware that this is happening. So that's across all of the functions we're reviewing. Our example for tangible maintained behavior is that Sally sees a toy on a shelf. She points to the toy and her mom gets the toy down for her. We really, really love to see that. We love the communication, even if it's just pointing or it's reaching. But often we see behaviors we want to reduce in this situation as well. Like Sally sees a toy on the shelf. She maybe falls to the floor, says she's not going to walk around the store. Maybe she yells. Those are all behaviors we might want to reduce. That could be tangible maintained because she wants that toy. So what can we do about tangible maintained behaviors? Proactively, before we even see the behavior, again, we're going to teach alternative ways to ask for items or activities. And that doesn't need to be through vocal communication. I do like to mention that alternative ways could be reaching, it could be pointing, it could even be making eye contact with the item and just looking at it, or eye contact with you and joint attention with the item. There's a lot of different ways that we can teach communication, even if a kiddo does not have vocal language. There's also AACs, and different picture boards that you could use. So be creative. Another strategy is to present the opportunity to have those items before the challenging behavior occurs, or let them know that there will be the opportunity to have those items before the challenging behavior occurs, maybe by printing out a picture or telling them they can go get a toy after shopping and you will buy a toy, and just letting them know that there is a way that they can have these items without that behavior before the behavior occurs. For reactive strategies for tangible function, you can wait until, well, when it's possible, you can wait until the child is safe for a short time before providing access to tangible items. I know it's not always possible, but it is a suggested thing to do when it is possible, so that way they're not getting the reinforcement of that tangible item or activity that they want to engage in right after that behavior you're looking to reduce. Or you can have the child engage in 2 to 3 easy desired behaviors before providing the item activity. So again, those desired behaviors could be us trying to teach the kiddo how to communicate by reaching, by pointing. We can have them reach for the item and then provide it. We can have them point to the item and then provide it. We can have them engage in anything that they know how to do. The point is just to separate the behavior you're looking to reduce from the reinforcement that they're receiving, which is that item and activity, even by just having them do one quick thing that's desired, because whatever happens right before the behavior, right before the reinforcement, is what will get reinforced and happen more often in the future. So overall here, the point is that if we can withhold giving it to them for a couple seconds of a calm body, or 1 or 2 easy demands that they're easy to complete, then we should. But if it's not possible or there's a safety risk, then you're just going to use the proactive strategies. Those are function-based. I'll pause here for like 30 seconds and see if there's any questions on any of the function-based strategies. A question you might be asking though is, what if I still don't know the function of behavior? And that is okay as well. We have a lot of function-specific strategies, but we also have general best practice strategies that you could try if appropriate. And we'll go over some of those as well. And those work across all 4 of the functions. But I will give about 20 seconds in case anyone has any questions.
Feel free to write anything in the chat if you would like to ask Megan something. Don't see anything.
All right, I will keep going then, but feel free to keep typing if you have anything. Okay, so general proactive strategies. So even if you know what the function might be based on what we already talked about, if you don't know, either way is completely fine. There's these general proactive strategies that you can use across functions, and we'll talk a little bit about how to set yourselves up for success and what we can do if we see those behaviors we want to reduce. One of my biggest suggestions would be gaining motivation from your child. If you gain motivation for an item or activity prior to presenting a demand, your kids are often more invested in completing this demand for you. You can know your child is motivated by something from watching what they play with, pointing or reaching towards items, providing images of these items and having your kiddo pick one by pointing or grabbing or bringing it to you, seeing if they get excited at the image. You can give an item to them and observe what they do with it. You can provide a choice of items or activities, or if your child is able to tell you, you can ask them. So you can be creative with how you know a kiddo is motivated for something. Often, it's just watching what they play with often, what they go for. If you put them in the living room with 7 toys, what are they gonna walk to? What are they gonna play with the longest? And then you can use that first then language that we talked about and say first shower, and then you can play with that game you really wanna play with. Um, a lot of people, we all have motivation for the things that we complete. We get paid for going to work, we get food for going grocery shopping, we get a different appearance or dead hair off of our hair when we go to the hairdresser. So we all are often motivated for the things that we're doing, and we just want kiddos to be motivated for what they have to do as well. I often like to create structure as well if it's something that you think structure will help for. But often I eliminate distracting things nearby and consider the location. So the table might be better for more structure if you're trying to teach a structured skill where the kiddo has to focus and you don't want all those toys around. But if you're teaching a play skill, the floor might be better for you because it's a little more natural. That's where the toys are. Your kiddo's gonna be more engaged with the toys when they're comfortable on the floor or the couch versus sitting up in a table when they're not used to sitting at a table. And I often recommend being located in a quiet area. Um, so this can work both ways. You can create structure or you can reduce the structure. If a table would have too much structure and you want them to be playing and you want them to be relaxing when they learn that skill. It all depends on the skill you're teaching. Um, We also like to set up that contingency. So we've talked about the first then language with preferred activity following a non-preferred activity to kind of get that motivation. But we can also set up a contingency with visuals like token boards or visual schedules and create an opportunity for a child to know about upcoming transitions, learn to manage their own schedules, and understand what they are earning following demands and approximately when they will earn that item or activity. Some of these are token boards. The token boards are individualized for a child. They have a couple pictures. They start at 1 token, and every time they earn 1 token, they get a break or they get a toy. And then they build it up to 2 tokens so that your child is learning how to do more and tolerate more before getting a break so that they can be set up for success at school. But they know however many spots on that token board, once all those tokens are filled in, they're going to get a break or a toy that they like. And that helps them know about the transitions, manage their own schedules, and understand when and what they are earning. It could also be a visual, like a first then board to talk about those preferred activities and show them a picture of what they're earning after. Again, we individualize all these things for each kid, so it's not something that I can just tell you exactly what to create, but it's something that will work for you in your schedule for the skills you're teaching and the behaviors you're looking to reduce. I forgot to talk about visual schedules. That's a really good one too. If your kiddo wants to plan out their day a little bit further, sometimes there's schedules that have like 4 or 5 boxes that tell them the next few activities so that they can prepare. Some of them they take off when they're completed with an activity or they put a check mark near it. So all of that is an option as well. You can get very creative with these, and that is my favorite part of creating visuals. Right. I will go over some general reactive strategies as well. That is, again, the one where you implement these strategies after you already see that a behavior that you're looking to reduce. We can always reassess the motivation we talked about in the proactive strategies. So we tried to get their motivation before a task. They still engaged in that behavior that we don't want to see as often. Now we're going to reassess that motivation. We're going to see if it's possible that the item or activity was not as motivating as we thought. And we can do this by presenting the item again and see if they're still interested. If we show them the item we thought they were motivated for and they turn away, they're probably not still interested in that item, and we might have to find another one to offer. We can present the original item and a new item to see if they're still choosing the item that we were working for already. If they're not choosing it anymore, it might not be a strong enough motivator to motivate your child to complete what you're asking them to do. You can always have a few items out and see what your child goes to again. You can put those items back out, see if they go to something else. You can ask them again what they would like to play with, show them the item, or try to gain motivation for another item or activity if you think they're really not interested in that. So that pretty much just means that they can change their mind on what they are earning, and you can work with them on changing that activity. You can also change your request if that is something that is possible, safe, and you think that it will help. If the current request appears to be unsuccessful, you can always change your wording of the request. You can ask 1 to 3 easier demands before asking again. Maybe they just clap their hands and then they touch their nose and then they get in the shower. And this is really interesting as well because there is science behind once you ask someone a couple easier demands, they might be more motivated to complete harder things that are newer to them or harder for them, or things that they're just not as interested in doing if you build up to it by asking easier things first. Um, you could always change to an easier request in general if you want to. Like if you were asking them to shower and they don't want to shower, you could just ask them to wash their hands if that's an option, if that's okay with you. You can also use preferred items or activities while completing whatever the activity is that you want them to do, or you can turn it again into a game. If you're working on brushing your teeth, who can keep the toothbrush in their mouth longer? Is it you or is it me? Let's give it a try. You can always increase your structure as well if your kiddo appears to be distracted or unfocused and you see that behavior that you're looking to reduce. Maybe now you try a table. Maybe we wanted to try it on the floor. It didn't go as great, so we need a little more structure. We'll move to a table. We'll move to somewhere with less distractions. Just clear distracting materials from any immediate area you move to. Maybe move to a quieter location where they're not going to be as distracted by sounds, or move to a less visually stimulating location where they're not going to be seeing as many things happening, as many people, as many items, just so they can focus a little bit more on your task or your instructions. Clarify contingency. So this is if your child appears to be unmotivated, there's a couple things that you can try. And if you didn't already try that visual, maybe now is when you make one. That behavior that you want to reduce happened. So now we're going to create a visual so that we can get through this together and I can show you what we're going to earn after. And in the moment, this might not be something fancy. This could be a piece of paper with 3 boxes, and everything you ask them to do, you get a check mark inside of a box. And then when all 3 boxes have a check mark, we can go outside and play on the swings like you want to do. Especially if it's right after behavior targeted for reduction, it doesn't have to be all pretty made online, tech savvy. Even the original ones don't have to be tech savvy. No pressure. You can also restate your expectations. You can go over what you're expecting, what you want them to do, and you can remind them of what they are getting afterwards. All right. We can also increase our teaching opportunities. So if your kid isn't responding or is responding incorrectly, you can always add prompts and fade them as the child becomes more independent. Sorry. Um, but if they're not getting an answer and you don't think they know what you're asking them to do, they might need a little bit of help with it. And we call that prompting. And there's a couple different types of prompting. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is just a couple common ones. But you can always gesture. So say you're asking a kid to pick something up off the floor and they're not really understanding you. You might bring them over to that item and just point to the item dramatically when you say pick up, and maybe that gesture is enough for them to understand what you're saying. Or maybe you model that behavior and you show them what picking something up looks like. And you say, pick up, and you pick something up, and that will show them how to pick that up. And if these don't work, that's okay. We can provide a little help. We can help them reach down, or we can help them grab the item if they're having a little bit of trouble with that. We can even provide a lot of help if they need it. And that doesn't mean that they'll need a lot of help forever, or they'll need you to help do this your help to do this activity forever. Because what you're going to do is you're going to fade that. You're going to start with a lot of help until they understand that pick up means to do this. And then you're going to fade it and you're only going to provide some help and they're going to have to do some of the work. And then maybe you fade to a gesture and eventually they should be able to do it independently. It's just while you're teaching the skill. Once they've mastered that skill, once they have that skill in their repertoire, you shouldn't have to help them. Okay. And again, if you don't know the function of the behavior, that's okay. All of the strategies we just went over can be helpful across all functions of behavior. And you're going to work with your BCBA to tailor a plan for your child because all plans are individualized and all kiddos' behaviors we're looking to reduce are different. All kids' behaviors that we're looking to increase are different. Like we talked about in the very beginning, every kid is a unique individual and the approach for everyone is going to be very, very different. So it's a really good time to work with your BCBA to tailor a plan for your child. Um, I cannot go over specifics of children that I do not know and I have not observed, but if it is a general question, you can put it in the chat and we might be able to review it. But you always want to consult with that professional. This webinar was meant to provide caregivers with a deeper understanding of why behaviors might occur at home. The examples and suggestions in the webinar are not individualized for any kid, and consulting with a BCBA who can observe your child and work with you to provide care that more directly supports what your child needs is always, always recommended. We do have some practice that we can go over. I'll give it, Annalie, are there any questions yet? I can give it a couple seconds if people are typing.
Absolutely. We've got some questions.
Amazing. And
I
then we
I
can have
also
practice
I
after.
know, and I will also apologize. The Q&A part did not pop up when we were asking earlier because technology sometimes is not our friend. We all know
No
that.
problem at all. We can
So I
go over
apologize
that.
to everyone. So somebody asked, what suggestions or what do you suggest for adult children with OCD behaviors that are hard to direct?
Okay. That are hard to what? Direct?
Redirect, sorry.
Redirect. Okay. Yeah, so I recommend for adult, I don't want to get too specific into diagnoses because OCD just isn't something that I have worked with very recently. But behaviors with adults are very, very similar to behaviors with kids, and this is aimed at children, but these strategies work for everyone. I know I mentioned I was a BCBA and I was a behavior technician, and those were with children. But right before that, I worked in a residential for adults with autism, and we use these same strategies. So any of those general proactive and reactive strategies should help. They also just need some motivation and need some visuals sometimes. And, you know, the redirection part, if it's difficult, you can focus on that proactive part because those will work as well. I hope that helps. If there's more specifics, I might be able to help a little bit more because it really depends on the behavior.
Right. Someone asked, um, I apologize, I hope I'm reading this correctly. My child behaves unreasonable in social settings of asking for my phone and keeps pestering until I give it to her, although before going into social setting, a reminder about the behavior, but she understands that I have time and later behaves the same as usual. How do I make her behave appropriately? She even does it at home when I'm on a call and she wants to start the TV.
Yeah, technology is a very big motivator for our kids, especially these days. Videos, there's just so much online. I would recommend starting small, and if it's often when you're out in public, it might be that they're not tolerating being out in public super long, or as long as you're expecting. But you could always use the electronics as motivation. You could say, "Hey, if you have a safe body and um, calm voice, calm body, if you can sit here in this chair," state those expectations. Whatever the expectations are, be as specific as possible. I keep trying to give you some, but be as specific as possible for the situation. And you can say, if you do this for 5 minutes, you can have 2 minutes on the phone. If you do it for 5 more minutes, you can have 2 minutes on the phone, and work up to having more and more time where they're able to engage in that expected behavior. And you can always add in those visuals. You can always add in those other proactive and reactive strategies and remind them and give them the behavior specific praise of the things they're doing great. But I would say if they're motivated for those electronics, use those electronics to your advantage.
Wonderful. Thank you. I also want to be mindful. I'm not sure if you were ready for all the questions yet, and I want to make sure you're able to also cover everything
I'm okay
in your
with
presentation.
either way. I have a couple practice situations we can review, um,
Yeah,
or I can take the
let's
questions
go
now
to
and
those so we
do
can
those.
do that, and then
Sure.
we can take the less like 6 or 7 minutes to answer questions, if that's okay. I just want
Perfect.
to make. All right, cool.
That sounds great. Thanks, Annalie. All right. So our practice for today are just some situations in which you guys might have some ideas of how to do this. I left the answers blank for this so that you guys could participate and tell me something you learned today that you might be able to do in this situation if you had this kid. But if you guys don't have anything, I will go over some options, and this might help you think about your own kids a little bit too. So this might actually answer some of those questions in the chat, but we'll go over what we can anyway. But our first practice situation is a 6-year-old girl, Sally, has no verbal communication. Her parents report that when she wants to go outside, she stands at the back door and bangs the glass while yelling until she is let outside. Once outside, she runs for the swings every time. So if we're thinking about functions of behavior, this doesn't necessarily scream sensory to me or that automatic function. It doesn't make me think that because she doesn't seem to be enjoying standing at the back door and banging the glass because she's yelling. It doesn't make me think of escape. She's not, unless she was trying to escape something inside the house. But since she runs for the swings every time, I would really think that this is a tangible behavior where she wants those swings. So, any of those, if you guys have any ideas of those tangible proactive or reactive strategies or the general reactive or proactive strategies that you might use, go ahead and put them in the chat. If not, I'll go over a couple options you could do in about 10-15 seconds.
Set a visual cue to a reminder for the child that we need to be safe with our bodies, and the home.
Absolutely. A visual cue could be excellent. And if you could even talk to your kiddo about it and like show them the visuals sometimes or put it by that door so that they see it often right before they would typically engage in that behavior for reduction. Absolutely. Are there any others, Annalie? Because I do have other options we could talk about as well.
One person said, and I hope I'm reading correctly, modal, um, what having a calm voice and safe hands are, or
Oh,
model. Sorry.
model.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I cannot. Sorry.
No, no problem at all.
It's like typing in front of
Absolutely.
people, reading in front of people.
No worries. Yes, absolutely. We always, always, always want to model the behavior that we want to see from the kiddo. Um, we want to do it 100% of the time, but nobody does it 100% of the time. But as much as you can model that, and you can even prompt them to do it with you. You can say like, safe body, put your hands like this, or put your hands by your side and engage in that with them. Absolutely. All right. We could also talk about teaching this child, Sally, how to ask to go outside, right? Maybe there's a picture by the outside door that she could just grab and bring to you if she doesn't have that vocal communication yet to come tell you she wants to go outside. Or maybe pointing at the picture when you're in the kitchen right next to that door could communicate it to you. Yeah, I love those ideas. All right. Practice number 2 is when asked to come to dinner, Rex always screams and runs into his room. If his parents go into his room, Rex will begin hitting or throwing items. What could Rex's parents try to decrease this behavior at dinner time? And again, I'll give you a couple seconds to type in the chat if you want to put ideas out there. Even if you want to guess the function of this behavior, go for it. If not, I'll review some in about 10 seconds. All right. This is a difficult one because there's a lot of different behaviors you might want to reduce, right? There's the screaming, there's the running, there's the hitting, there's the throwing items, and you might want to pick some of them, or if they happen together, you might want to pick all of them. Um, but because there's a demand at the beginning where when he's asked to come to dinner, that's when he engages in this behavior. I would probably say this seems to be an escape maintained behavior. He doesn't want to go to dinner, and so he's engaging in these behaviors. My largest best recommendation would be to find the motivation for something else that he could earn for going to dinner. And then you can make a visual of it if you wanted. But if he has a favorite movie, a favorite song, a favorite toy, a favorite dessert, if you come to dinner and sit down, we can then have that dessert. We can then engage in that activity. You can then have alone time with the person you've been wanting to see all day. And that might get him to come to the table without engaging in those behaviors for reduction. It could also be something like reducing the expectations. If it's about food, he's trying to escape the food. Maybe that you start at just coming to the table and sitting at the table and they eat separately. They eat either before or after some food that they like, and you can build it up to eating with you. You could also provide choices like what they would like to eat. Or what they would like to drink, or give them some sort of choice to go to dinner so they feel a little more involved. All right, I think I have one. I have two more. I'll go over these pretty quickly, but Sarah bites her own finger in clothing frequently. Her parents have tried to tell her to stop and given her other things to do with her hands. This slightly reduced her mouthing behavior, but only for a short time. So, what else could her parents try? And again, I'll give about 10 seconds.
Someone
Okay.
said Chewy.
Yes, I love chewies. Try something that creates a similar sensory sensation that feels about the same, because this is probably an automatic behavior where they like the feeling of the mouthing. And so giving them something similar is absolutely my first recommendation for that. All right. And then we could try some other things, right? Like if you see her biting her own finger or her clothing, maybe we move that finger away, we move that clothing away, and we can then either redirect her hands to playing and a functional activity with her hands that she can't bite herself, or replacing that with a chewing, kind of combining those ideas of blocking that sensory input that she's getting, that reactive strategy we talked about, just reducing some of that reinforcement she receives from liking how that feels, and then putting something else that feels very similar in. Or even if a chewy isn't a possibility, creating one thing that is more hygienic to chew on. So, like, if a kiddo really doesn't respond well to chewies, but really likes this one stuffed animal, at least it's one item and he's not going to school putting tons of things in his mouth or her mouth. Um, so maybe Sarah could find something similar to a finger that is long. Maybe we have like in our center, we have worms that she might like to chew on. And if she has one thing, she's going to get lot less germs in her mouth and it's easier to keep sanitized. And then the last one, I put an example here where Rachel's mom tells her to go play while she makes dinner. She begins jumping off the couches and the coffee tables, and her mom tells her to stop jumping on things. We actually already went over this one, but I wanted to revisit it from our automatic slide because if this happens on a daily basis, what could Rachel's mom do to increase safety while she cooks? All right, I'll give it 10 seconds and then the rest is Q&A. All right. I love automatic maintained behaviors because they are so fun to find replacements for. If jumping and spinning are enjoyable for your kiddo and they're just not doing it appropriately, there are so many cool sensory focused items out there now to get some of that energy out. One of my favorites is a crash pad that they can jump into over and over. They can jump into different ways, and they can get a bunch of different jumping and landing sensory feelings and running towards it. And it's safe for your kid as long as it's in a safe area, far enough away from walls or tables and things like that, and they're being monitored. Um, they could engage in a jumping or physical activity before mom starts cooking so she gets some of that energy out beforehand and they do it together. So it's something that's a little more expected and is working well with their household routine. Or they could try something like a hopscotch mat for inside or game where you have to jump or even like a kid yoga or exercise video while mom is cooking dinner. All right. And that is all I had for today. So I can definitely answer some more of those questions if you have them, Annalie.
Wonderful. Someone asked, they currently get ABA support for at their child's mainstream school. How often or what recommendations would you have for home um,
Yeah.
therapy?
I unfortunately can't give recommendations for how often or how long they should be seen because their kiddos all have different needs and some kiddos who are thriving in a school can do 2 hours a week at home, and some kiddos need more services than that. So unfortunately I can't answer without knowing your kid. I wish I could, sorry.
Appreciate it. Um, Someone asked, their child loves to watch TV with the volume really loud, but won't wear headphones and has a massive meltdown when we turn it down. You have any suggestions for redirecting?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because I'm sure there are other people in the house who don't want to hear it really loud. So I'm sure that that's something that, you would rather your kid only hear. For tolerating headphones, headphones are definitely the first thing that come to my mind. You could start teaching the tolerating headphone skill by starting at like 2 seconds at a time. And it seems silly, but saying put on 2 seconds, take off, put on for 2 seconds, take off, and build that time up to being a significant amount of time. And some kids learn this skill really, really fast when you start it at that really short time frame because they're getting interactions with this item that are safe and don't hurt them. But in the meantime, you could, possibly, depending on your situation, have the TV in a location away from others in the house, have an iPad that they can put closer to their ear. Um, kind of give them their own area where they can be louder in the house if possible.
Thank you. Let's see here. Making sure I'm free. Do you have any suggestions for nonverbal um, people with severe aggression if the behavior is over demanding an item?
Absolutely. If it's for an item, it's one of those tangible maintained or yeah, item or activity. It's one of those tangible maintained behaviors. And I would start somewhere like looking at an item or bringing an item to you to ask for it. And as often as you can, give them that item when they do something like that because they're engaging in that behavior instead of that physical behavior. Um, I usually start with looking at an item or like looking at someone to continue that activity. And then I go up to reaching and then pointing, and working on those nonverbal cues to communicate because they're just trying to communicate that they want something. So whatever communication you're willing to accept, I would just try to teach that.
Wonderful. I also want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're just at time, but do you want to answer another question or do you have
Yeah, absolutely.
time? Okay.
Absolutely.
All righty. Let's see. Somebody asked how any suggestions for a child having meltdowns every time they don't get their way?
Oh, yeah, it's really hard to not get our way sometimes. And if you know your kiddo, like what they're looking for and what they're trying to communicate, and what they're not getting their way with, maybe there's a little bit of compromise there. If they're not getting their way because they have to go to the doctors, maybe they can have something that they really wanted afterwards. And, a food that they're not often given because it's not super healthy or it's not really great for them, or an activity that you don't get to do too often because it's a little expensive. And you can use that first then motivation if it's not getting their way because you're not buying all the toys in the store. Maybe there's visuals that, you can buy one toy, show me that one toy you want. And they can have like a little visual of how many things that they can put in the cart and they can check it off as you go. Um, but motivation and trying to give them a way to ask for whatever they're not getting would be my recommendation.
Thank you. I think we have one more and then we'll close it out for the night.
Sounds
Um, what suggestions do you have for attention seeking, pinching or biting for someone who is nonverbal?
That one is really difficult because biting and pinching are not very safe behaviors and they hurt other people. So it is really, really hard to not give attention to that, especially if it's happening to someone else and you want to go block it. I'm so sorry. Did they put why they think it's happening in there or no?
They did, and attention, just attention seeking.
Attention. Okay. I would really work on that behavior specific praise or attention when they're engaging in activities that they should be doing. Give all the attention in the world that you can give them. Great job sitting. I love how you're watching TV. I love how your hands are so safe down by your body. You're doing a wonderful job. Giving all of that when you can, and that, one-to-one time. And reactively, you're going to have to give attention sometimes because it's an unsafe behavior and you don't want to let them pinch and bite, but you can do things proactively like wear jean jackets or wear a couple layers so that it doesn't hurt as much. And if they're not hurting you, I would just try to react as little as possible right in front of them. Or if they're only hurting you a little, even as little as possible in front of them, and you can talk about it or get upset a little bit further away if you're able to do so, just so they don't get that reinforcement and they don't see it.